You've probably found yourself lying awake for hours in the dark of night, eyes wide open, your mind spinning, even though your body is exhausted. You've tried every sleep technique out there, yet nothing truly brings you the relaxation you long for. Tonight, we're going to uncover the dark psychological tricks, the secrets that few dare to speak of, that can help you take control of your sleep in ways more powerful than you might think. These tips won't just help you sleep better, they'll open up a psychological world you've never imagined. Prepare yourself for a shift in how you view sleep. If what I share tonight resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe to the Smart Sleep channel so you never miss out on any secrets that will guide you to deeper rest and a stronger recovery. When we understand the power of the need for closure, there's another powerful factor in modern life that we often don't realize: scarcity. Scarcity isn't just about a lack of material things. It also relates to the feeling of having limited time, opportunities, or attention. Those who manipulate our psychology have been very clever in realizing that scarcity can trigger strong reactions in us, making us act hastily, without thinking, simply because we fear missing out. This scarcity mentality has been cleverly exploited in marketing strategies, sales tactics, and even in social policies. Scarcity creates a sense of urgency and value. When we think something is becoming scarce, whether it's a product, an opportunity, or even someone's attention, we start to feel it's more valuable. This feeling drives us to act, often without thinking about why we're doing it. You might have found yourself standing in a long line at a store just to grab a discounted item on Black Friday. Or perhaps you've fallen into the trap of buying limited items with a message that says, "Only a few left." That sense of scarcity makes you feel that if you don't act right away, you'll miss your chance, and thus, you'll lose out on something you believe to be very important. In marketing strategies, brands and influencers not only create product scarcity, but also manipulate time scarcity. Limited time offers, golden hour events, or flash sales that last for only a short period create a sense of urgency. This leads consumers to make purchases without careful consideration, fearing that if they miss the chance, they may never be able to buy the product again. The feeling of scarcity is cleverly used to trigger hasty actions not based on logic, but on the fear of missing out. This isn't just limited to stores or advertisements. It also appears in politics and authoritarian regimes. Dictatorial leaders understand very well the power of scarcity in maintaining their hold on power. They create a sense of scarcity of freedom, making people feel that if they don't act immediately to protect the regime, they will lose their rights, stability, or even their survival. The urgent calls, the propaganda campaigns that say, "This can only happen once," create fear and push for action, leaving people no time to reason through things. In modern society, the feeling of scarcity isn't just created by external factors. It also comes from within us. When we feel we lack attention, affection, or recognition from others, we easily become panicked and try to seize what we believe is valuable. We might find ourselves caught in toxic relationships or act irrationally just to satisfy that feeling of deprivation. This raises an important question. Can we recognize when we're being manipulated by this feeling of scarcity? The feeling of scarcity can make us act without careful thought, especially in the age of technology. You may notice yourself feeling anxious when you can't update information immediately, or when you can't join a heated discussion on social media. This feeling makes us feel like we're missing out on something important, and so we feel compelled to act hastily, unable to control our actions. However, scarcity is merely an illusion, a tactic used by manipulators to make us feel like we have to act right away, without taking the time to think. Especially in marketing campaigns, creating a sense of scarcity doesn't always reflect a real shortage. An item could be mass-produced and readily available in stock, but when the message says only a few left, consumers feel like they're facing a golden opportunity and rush to buy without careful thought. This strategy is effective because it taps into our psychological sense of deprivation, making consumers feel they must act immediately to avoid missing out. So, how can we avoid being swept into this psychological game? First, we need to learn to recognize when the feeling of scarcity is real and when it's just a strategy to manipulate us. When you're confronted with a lack of time feeling, ask yourself, is this really important to me? Do I really need to act right now? Or can I take some time to think and make a decision based on reason? When you can clearly distinguish between the feeling of scarcity created by psychology and reality, you will be freer in making your decisions. Don't let the fear of missing out or external pressures take away your sense of control. When you become aware of these tricks, it will be easier for you to protect yourself from impulsive actions that might arise simply from the fear that an opportunity will never come back. In modern life, scarcity can appear everywhere, from discounted items in stores to once-in-a-lifetime opportunities that you can't afford to miss. But if you always remember that sometimes, the more something is advertised as scarce, the more likely it is that you can live without it. You'll become more alert and able to make wiser decisions. We shouldn't let the scarcity mentality govern our actions and emotions. Instead, focus on what truly matters and what is truly valuable in your life. When you no longer get swept into unnecessary races, you'll find that life becomes lighter and more fulfilling, because you are no longer manipulated by the feeling of deprivation created by manipulators. When we understand the power of the feeling of scarcity and how it can make us act hastily and irrationally, we can't ignore another extremely powerful psychological phenomenon: the bandwagon effect. This is one of the basic psychological tactics used by manipulators to make us act according to trends without thinking or questioning the logic behind those decisions. When we see others around us doing something, we tend to feel we must do the same, simply out of fear of being left behind, or because we feel that if everyone is doing it, it must be the right thing to do. The bandwagon effect, combined with conformity, creates a powerful psychological force that can cause us to lose our ability to think independently and make our own decisions. The bandwagon effect occurs when people begin to follow a trend just because everyone else is doing it. This is one of the most easily noticeable psychological strategies in everyday life, and it's also one of the most powerful ways to control human behavior. For example, in advertising campaigns, when a product or service becomes popular and receives widespread support, people feel pressured to buy that product even if they don't truly need it. The crowd creates a sense of social credibility. And so, whenever someone sees others doing something, they naturally feel that it's the right thing to do, even when they have no information or reason to make that decision. We're all too familiar with the "everyone else is doing it" strategies in media campaigns, advertisements, or even in personal relationships. The influence of the crowd can appear in many different forms, from participating in trends on social media to voting for a politician just because they're receiving widespread support. Even social groups or communities often use the bandwagon effect to encourage new members to take part in actions they believe are right. Not following the crowd often comes with feelings of exclusion and a lack of recognition, which makes it easy for us to abandon independent thinking and blend into the group consensus. Conformity, or groupthink, is an inseparable factor in the bandwagon effect. When we conform to the group, we don't just act like others, we also start to believe that it's the only right way to act. This conformity isn't always harmful, but when it's exploited for manipulation, it can lead to blind and misguided decisions. Psychological manipulators know very well the power of conformity, and they use it to create a collective where everyone acts the same, chasing values or beliefs that they don't truly understand. For example, in political campaigns, a group of people can be convinced that an idea, policy, or candidate is the right choice simply because many others think so. Sometimes, a policy or idea may not even be the best, but when it is supported by the crowd, it will be seen as the truth. This mindset not only affects personal decisions but also influences larger societal issues. Movements or policies may only exist because of the crowd's influence, and once the crowd stops supporting them, they quickly lose their power. One of the most common forms of the bandwagon effect is jumping on fashion trends or consumer fads. Do you remember the last time you got caught up in buying something because all your friends were buying it, or because it became a hot trend on social media? These trends not only affect how we spend our money, but they also shape our habits and lifestyles. We tend to get swept up in what the crowd deems as desirable or admirable, and as a result, we sometimes forget that these decisions don't always reflect our true preferences or needs. That's why being aware of the bandwagon effect is so important. When you realize that you might be caught up in trends or actions just because everyone around you is doing the same thing, you'll quickly see that the consensus of the crowd doesn't always mean that decision is the right one. Making decisions based on logical analysis and personal evaluation will help you avoid the blind following that the bandwagon effect can create. To avoid falling into the trap of group conformity, you need to develop your ability to think independently. Always ask yourself, do I really believe in this? Is this a decision I want to make based on my own reasoning? By doing so, you won't be easily swayed by trends or actions you don't fully agree with. In fact, self-awareness and self-control will help you steer clear of the crowd's influence, allowing you to maintain independence in both your thinking and actions. However, not all forms of the bandwagon effect are harmful. In some cases, when the crowd aligns with doing something good, it can create positive change in society. But the key here is to have a clear understanding of the purpose and motivation behind those collective actions. When you join a movement or trend, make sure you understand your own reasons and goals, and don't simply follow because you fear being left behind. The bandwagon effect and conformity aren't always bad. Sometimes, we need collective agreement to drive positive change. However, when we lack self-awareness and simply follow the crowd without thinking, we may end up caught in actions that lead us astray. The important thing is to always maintain the ability to think independently and have self-control, ensuring that the group's consensus doesn't dictate all your actions. So, always remember that consensus doesn't always mean correctness, and asking yourself whether you truly want to do something is the only way to avoid losing your way in the crowd. Keep your confidence in your own abilities, and don't let anyone or any group lead you into decisions you don't fully trust. Now, moving on to the next psychological trick. Once we understand the bandwagon effect and group conformity, another psychological tactic we need to recognize to protect ourselves is lowballing and the manipulation of commitment. These are sophisticated strategies that manipulators use to lead you into decisions you might not fully agree with. But once you've started committing, it becomes hard to back out. Commitment manipulation is one of the most dangerous tactics because it exploits human loyalty and self-esteem, making us feel that it's difficult to turn back, even when we realize we've made a mistake. Lowballing is a common tactic used by manipulators to get you to commit to a decision before all the important details are revealed. This way, you begin a commitment without fully understanding all the factors involved. And once you've started committing, You feel like it's difficult to refuse or change your decision. A simple example of lowballing could be when you walk into a store and are offered an item at a very attractive price. After you decide to buy it, the salesperson reveals additional fees or other costs that weren't disclosed initially. Even though you may feel frustrated and uncomfortable, you feel like you've already committed, and it's hard to back out, even if you're not entirely happy with the change. The psychology behind lowballing is simple. Once you've committed to a choice, you naturally try to justify that decision to reduce feelings of disappointment and inner conflict. You don't want to feel like you've wasted time, money, or energy on a wrong decision. This justification is a way to protect your self-esteem and maintain the feeling that you made the right choice, even when that might not actually be the case. As a result, not only will you stick with your original decision, but you might also convince yourself that the change is reasonable, even if it's not truly so. In sales situations, lowballing is incredibly effective at making customers continue with a decision they don't really want. Once a customer says yes to a low price, they feel a responsibility to complete the transaction, even when the costs rise later. This doesn't only happen in shopping, but also in job negotiations. A recruiter might offer an attractive salary during an interview, only to later reveal that the job demands more hours or has additional conditions that weren't clearly explained at first. Even though this might make you uncomfortable, once you've committed, it feels hard to back out because you've already emotionally and logically tied yourself to the decision. This doesn't just stop at shopping or work. Lowballing can be used in much more serious situations, like in abusive relationships, or even within extremist religious organizations or cults. Initially, manipulators will offer an enticing promise or commitment, protection, love, or acceptance that you long for. Once you've started committing, they gradually reveal more severe and difficult demands. However, because you've already committed, you feel you can't back out, even when you realize things aren't what you imagined. This commitment becomes part of your emotional dependency, making it hard to escape, even though you know it wasn't a wise decision. Commitment manipulation is not only applied in sales or work situations, it can also be seen in personal relationships or social groups. When you commit to an action or an idea, you feel that you can't back out because you've tied yourself to that decision. Even in personal relationships, when you agree to do something for someone, you may find it hard to say no after committing, even if it doesn't align with your own needs or desires. In this way, manipulators can exploit your commitment to control your behavior and keep you fulfilling their demands, even if you feel uncomfortable. To protect yourself from commitment, manipulation, and lowballing, you need to develop a strong sense of self-awareness. Never rush into a commitment before you have enough information and have carefully considered it. Learn to recognize the signs of lowballing, such as feeling pressured or deceived during the decision-making process. When you realize you don't have enough information or clear conditions, ask for more details before committing. Don't feel ashamed to request clarification on all the details before making a decision. Having time to think carefully is your right, and you deserve full and accurate information before committing to anything. Additionally, ask yourself if the decision really aligns with your goals and values. You don't need to commit to a decision just because of external pressure. Always check your motivations and what's driving you to make that decision. If you realize you're committing just because of fear of loss or guilt, reconsider your decision. By doing this, you'll maintain control and the ability to make your own decisions, rather than being swept into misguided actions just because you feel committed. Lowballing and commitment manipulation can happen in many areas of life, from small decisions to bigger ones. However, When you can identify and control these tactics, you'll no longer be manipulated and can make truly thoughtful, rational decisions. Never feel like you have to commit just because you've already started, or because you fear losing something important. Always remember that you have the right to change your decision and retain your freedom in making choices. Once we've identified tricks like lowballing and commitment manipulation, we need to be aware of even more subtle persuasion techniques, those that can make us easily accept requests that may initially seem unreasonable or unsuitable. One of the common techniques in manipulating human behavior and psychology is door in the face and foot in the door. Both strategies use a shift in the level of demand to make people more likely to agree to things they might have initially rejected if asked directly from the start. The door in the face technique is one of the most well-known tactics in persuasive psychology. The concept behind this strategy is simple but highly effective. Start with a large, seemingly unreasonable request, then follow it up with a smaller, more reasonable one. For example, you might ask someone for something very big that you know they will decline, such as, "Could you lend me 10 million VND? After they refuse, you then make a smaller request, such as, "Could you lend me 500,000 VND instead?" Even though the amount you're asking for is much smaller than the original request, because they've already declined the larger request, the smaller one becomes much easier for them to accept. As a result, you easily gain their consent. The sense of compromise is key to this strategy. When you ask for something too big, the other person will feel like they've done something impossible, and therefore feel obligated to agree to the smaller request as a compromise. They don't want to feel like they've completely rejected the idea and come off as unwilling, so they're willing to accept the smaller request simply because it doesn't seem too bad. In this way, you've tricked their sense of reason and gotten them to act according to your will, even if the initial small request wasn't entirely reasonable. The foot in the door technique is a similar strategy, but uses the opposite approach. Instead of starting with a big request and scaling down, this technique begins with a small request, then gradually increases the demands with larger, harder to refuse requests. This is how manipulators open the door for small requests. And once someone agrees to a small action, they feel compelled to agree to larger ones that follow. For example, you might ask a friend to do something simple, like, "Could you help me carry this bag over there?" After they agree, you can continue asking them to help with something bigger, like, "Could you help me move next weekend?" Because they've already agreed to the first small request, they feel that they must continue agreeing to the larger ones to maintain consistency in their actions. The principle behind the foot in the door technique is human consistency in actions. Once you agree to do something, you feel the need to continue being consistent with that action. If you refuse a larger request after agreeing to a smaller one, you might feel embarrassed or uncomfortable because of the inconsistency. This is why manipulators can exploit this principle to easily get you to accept increasingly larger demands. Both of these techniques leverage a basic principle of human psychology. We tend to act consistently with our previous decisions, and we find it hard to refuse a request once we've agreed to something, whether it's big or small. Door in the face and foot in the door both use this influence to gradually and subtly change our behavior. In reality, these techniques don't just apply in sales or negotiations. They can also appear in personal relationships, work environments, or even in social situations. Once you agree to do something, even the smallest task, you're more likely to continue agreeing to bigger things, which can draw you into a spiral of increasingly complex requests. This is particularly dangerous in abusive situations, where the abuser may start with small demands gradually pulling the victim into a controlling relationship with no way out. In relationships, one person may use the foot in the door technique to ask for small actions, gradually making the other person feel responsible for larger and larger requests, creating an invisible dependence that the manipulated party may not easily recognize. For example, they might start by asking you to do something seemingly small, like, "Can you spare a little time to listen to me?" And from there, make more complicated and emotionally demanding requests. Since you've agreed to the small one, it becomes harder to refuse the larger ones, even if they violate your own rights. It's important to recognize that techniques like door in the face and foot in the door aren't always bad, but they can be used very subtly and dangerously to manipulate your behavior and decisions. Knowing about them will help you stay alert and retain the ability to make independent decisions, rather than being swept into a series of requests you don't actually want. So, how can we protect ourselves from these strategies? First, ask yourself if the request you're being asked to agree to is truly reasonable, and if you can refuse it without feeling guilty. Remember, you don't have to agree to any request just because you previously agreed to a smaller one. Refusing a request is perfectly reasonable, as long as you do so respectfully and rationally. Second, always remain vigilant and be aware of situations where you might be manipulated. If someone is trying to push you into agreeing to a larger request right after you've agreed to a small one, don't hesitate to stop and think. Ask yourself if you truly want to do it, and whether that decision aligns with your values and goals. Finally, learn to set clear boundaries in relationships and transactions. You have the right to refuse any request that makes you uncomfortable, whether it's in your personal relationships or at work. Learning how to say no confidently, without feeling guilty, is an important skill in protecting yourself from these manipulation tactics. Door in the face and foot in the door are common strategies for manipulating human behavior, but if you are aware of them and learn to control yourself, you'll be able to protect yourself from this invisible control. When we are fully aware of tactics like lowballing, foot in the door, and door in the face, there is another crucial factor we need to understand in order to protect ourselves from manipulation: urgency and fear of missing out. FOMO. These are highly effective tactics, especially in the modern world, where we are constantly faced with rushed decisions and fleeting opportunities. These strategies don't only influence our behavior in shopping or consumption, but they can also change the way we view opportunities in life, making us more likely to act impulsively, simply out of fear of missing something important. Urgency, or the sense of immediate need, is often created through time-limited offers, such as only one day left to register, or buy now before it's gone. These messages have a powerful impact on our minds. When we hear such phrases, we may feel like we are facing a rare opportunity that, if not seized immediately, will slip away forever. Indeed, our brains react strongly to scarcity and loss aversion, making us unwilling to miss out on something, even if we don't fully understand what we're deciding on. When marketers, brands, or even politicians create a sense of urgency, they're not just making you feel like you have a unique opportunity, they're activating a very strong part of your brain: loss aversion. Loss aversion is a concept in psychology that explains how we feel pain when losing something more acutely than the pleasure we feel when gaining something of equal value. This means we act quickly and without thought when we think we might lose an opportunity, even if that opportunity may not be that important to us. When under time pressure, we are more likely to make decisions without careful consideration, simply because we don't want to miss out. Fear of missing out, FOMO, thrives on these feelings. FOMO isn't just about the anxiety of missing an opportunity. It's also the feeling that if we don't join a trend or seize an opportunity, we will be left behind and no longer be recognized. In today's society, where everyone shares their special moments on social media, FOMO is stronger than ever. You might see your friends traveling, attending events, or buying new items, and you feel like you're missing out on something significant. We don't just fear missing an opportunity, we also fear being judged as outdated, falling behind socially. This type of FOMO often appears in situations like when you receive time-limited discount offers or invitations to events with limited tickets. You see that if you don't act immediately, you'll miss a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and at that point, it's not just about losing a product or an opportunity. It's about feeling excluded from a community or no longer being part of what's happening. This is an extremely strong feeling, which can easily compel people to act without careful thought. When you feel that you might be left behind, you'll quickly rush to act without considering the long-term consequences. Because of this, FOMO and urgency are widely used tactics in marketing, where brands create a sense of scarcity and limited opportunity. Promotions, flash sales, and limited availability announcements are all ways in which brands make consumers feel they must act immediately or they'll lose a valuable opportunity. However, most of these campaigns are just psychological tricks, making consumers feel like they are missing out on something, even though those products may still be in stock or easily available later. Fear of missing out can also be easily exploited by politicians, who often create urgency to push people into action. They may use election campaigns with messages like, "This is the one chance to change the country," or "This opportunity won't come again if you don't act now." This sense of urgency not only drives voters to cast their ballots, but it also makes them feel like they must act immediately, or else they will be left behind and unable to make any changes. Therefore, FOMO in politics can create a mentality that, if you don't participate now, you won't have another opportunity to change things. In reality, urgency and FOMO strategies are not limited to sales or politics. They appear in every aspect of life, from personal relationships to career decisions. You might feel pressured to join a project or an activity just because everyone else is participating, or you might feel afraid of falling behind on trends or social standards. This feeling can cause you to lose control over your own decisions, and at times, you act simply because you don't want to feel left behind, rather than because you genuinely want to take part in something. So, how can we protect ourselves from these manipulative tactics? First, it's important to learn how to recognize when you're being influenced by urgency or FOMO. Ask yourself, do I really need to act right now? Is this sense of urgency genuinely coming from my own needs, or is it just a psychological tactic making me feel like I have to act? When you can clearly identify these tricks, you'll be less likely to get swept up in decisions made without careful consideration. Another way to avoid manipulation is by learning to remain calm and patient. When you feel the pressure of FOMO or urgency pushing you to act immediately, take a moment to stop and think carefully about your decision. Sometimes, acting quickly just because of a sense of urgency can lead to unwanted consequences. Always remember that the choice and time to think are yours. Don't let FOMO or urgency push you into making a hasty decision. Finally, always seek clarity and full information before making any important decision. Decisions made under time pressure or fear of missing out may lead to regret later. Make sure you understand what you are choosing and that you're not simply acting because you feel like you can't miss out on an opportunity. Fear of missing out and urgency can be powerful tactics for manipulating behavior, but when you can recognize and understand them, you'll no longer easily be pulled into decisions made without thought. Trust in your ability to make wise decisions, rather than letting temporary emotions dictate your actions. Once we've discussed tactics like urgency and FOMO used to manipulate our behavior, let's delve into a more subtle aspect of psychological manipulation: subliminal messaging and priming. Both of these techniques don't require the recipient to consciously be aware of the message, yet they can profoundly influence our behavior and decisions without us realizing it. These tactics tap into the hidden corners of our minds, exploiting unconscious effects that we cannot easily recognize, making us susceptible to influence without any resistance. Subliminal messaging is a psychological tactic that uses hidden cues to influence thoughts and behaviors without our conscious awareness. This can be done through sounds, images, or messages subtly embedded within media, advertisements, or even music and movies. These messages are designed to bypass our conscious perception and go straight into the deeper layers of our subconscious, where they can trigger a response, feeling, or behavior we don't consciously recognize. For example, you might see an advertisement with soft visuals or sounds that seem insignificant at first glance. However, these subliminal messages can evoke a feeling or need you hadn't clearly realized, such as a sudden craving for food when seeing images of meals, or a desire to buy a product after hearing a specific piece of music. Studies have shown that subliminal messages can alter consumer attitudes and behaviors without them being aware, such as choosing a product, picking a brand, or even changing attitudes toward a social issue they hadn't previously considered. Priming, while seemingly similar to subliminal messaging, is a distinct psychological tactic. Priming involves exposure to specific elements, such as words, images, or sounds, to activate existing thoughts and emotions in our minds, which in turn influences our behavior and decisions. In fact, priming doesn't require the message to be hidden, but rather cleverly stimulates psychological links in our brains, helping form thoughts or responses unconsciously. For instance, if you hear a story about wealth and success, you might feel motivated to work harder to achieve those things, even though you hadn't planned to do so. In advertising campaigns, priming is used subtly to create associations between a product and positive values. For example, if you see a product advertised in a luxurious setting with imagery of success and beauty, you might subconsciously link that product to success and prosperity, even without realizing that the visual elements are influencing your purchasing decisions. With priming, the message doesn't need to be repeated over and over. A small trigger is enough to create a strong emotional response within you. Both subliminal messaging and priming rely on the psychological mechanisms of exposure and association. When we are exposed to certain elements, whether they be words, images, or sounds, our brains not only consciously recognize them, but also link them to emotions, values, and behaviors already present in our subconscious. These elements gradually influence how we perceive and act, without our rational mind being fully involved. Therefore, both of these techniques can lead to changes in behavior that the manipulated individual may not even realize they are being steered toward. While both subliminal messaging and priming can be applied in advertising and marketing, they can also be used in other areas, such as politics and social relations. Subliminal messaging and priming have the power to shift social perceptions and political behaviors without the need for clear persuasion. For example, political ad campaigns might use images, words, or sounds to trigger strong emotions that participants aren't consciously aware of. When you watch an advertisement with images of a leader smiling, shaking hands with happy citizens, your brain might unconsciously associate that leader with feelings of safety and happiness without realizing that you are being guided by these subconscious elements. However, there's something very important to remember. Subliminal messaging and priming use our subconscious mind in subtle ways, which can lead to decisions that don't always reflect our conscious and rational thinking. This can result in behavior we may not desire, or even actions that contradict our values and principles. For example, someone may ignore an advertisement about health because they think it's not relevant to them, but a strong image of a healthy, energetic person might make them subconsciously want to buy that product, even if they don't actually have a need for it. So, when you become aware of the influence of subliminal messaging and priming, you can protect yourself from this subconscious manipulation by maintaining awareness and self-reflection about what's happening around you. Ask yourself, is this decision truly coming from my needs and rational thinking, or am I just reacting to subconscious factors that have been triggered? When you can recognize these factors, you'll be able to protect yourself from sophisticated and unwelcome persuasion tactics. Subliminal messaging and priming aren't just powerful tools in marketing. They can also deeply affect social and political psychology, driving behavioral changes without the involvement of reasoning. However, once you realize their influence, you can be more proactive in your decision-making and avoid being swayed by subconscious tactics, helping you live a life that is autonomous and not manipulated by unclear forces. Rational thinking and self-awareness are key to maintaining independence in a world full of these subconscious strategies. Now that we've explored subtle tactics like subliminal messaging and priming, there's another psychological element we can't overlook in our journey of exploring psychological manipulation: cognitive biases, the distortions in our perception that we all fall prey to, whether consciously or unconsciously. Two prominent cognitive biases that significantly impact how we take in information and make decisions are confirmation bias and framing. Both of these techniques not only explain why we often act irrationally, but they also show how the world around us can manipulate our thoughts and decisions without us realizing it. Confirmation bias is one of the most common cognitive biases we experience. It occurs when we only seek out, focus on, and believe information that confirms our existing beliefs and assumptions, while ignoring or dismissing contradictory evidence. Why do we do this? Simply because humans tend to seek confirmation for what they already believe, as it reduces inner conflict and makes us feel more secure about our decisions and thoughts. This is entirely rational from a psychological standpoint. We don't want to feel that we were wrong or didn't know enough. So instead of expanding our thinking, we close our minds and seek out information that aligns with our beliefs. Confirmation bias can deeply affect all areas of life. In political debates, for example, we often only look for information from sources that align with our views and are reluctant to change our perspective, even when we encounter persuasive arguments or evidence from the opposing side. We selectively filter information so that it reinforces our beliefs, rather than being open-minded and considering alternative viewpoints. This is why political or social debates often lead to polarization, where each side believes they are right and refuses to accept information that contradicts them. This mindset makes us more easily influenced by one-sided information, leading to decisions and actions that lack objectivity. In addition to that, framing is a technique used to shape and manipulate how we perceive information. Framing involves presenting an issue, event, or fact in a specific way to influence the emotions and thoughts of the person receiving the information. For example, the same event when described in different ways, will evoke different reactions and decisions. If you say, only 20% of the stock is on sale, the listener might feel that this is an attractive opportunity, while if you say, 80% of the products have already sold out, the message will create a sense of scarcity, making the listener feel like the opportunity is slipping away. The same fact, but presented differently, can lead to completely different actions. Framing influences how we perceive an issue. In advertising campaigns, brands often use framing to stimulate emotions and guide customer purchasing decisions. If a product is introduced as the newest, most advanced, customers are more likely to feel that it's a superior product, even if its quality might not be any different from other products already available. The way this information is presented taps into the desire for the new and modern, leading to a purchase decision without the customer having to think much about it. Framing not only impacts shopping decisions but is also used in politics and social issues. A good example is when a policy or action is presented in a positive or negative light, which influences how the public reacts to it. For example, if a policy is framed as a solution to help the poor, people are more likely to support it, while if it is described as inefficient public spending, people will have a negative reaction. The message doesn't change, only how it is framed, and this is enough to influence public psychology and behavior. Both confirmation bias and framing affect how we make decisions. Confirmation bias makes us seek information that confirms our beliefs, while framing changes how we process and evaluate the information we already have. Both techniques exploit the lack of objectivity in human cognition, causing us to act not based on rational analysis, but on emotions, beliefs, and information that's been manipulated. When we are influenced by these cognitive biases, we easily become victims of manipulation tactics without realizing it. How can we protect ourselves from these cognitive biases? First, we need to understand and become aware of these biases. When you recognize that you're looking for information to confirm your existing views, you can proactively check the sources of information and opinions you're consuming. Ask yourself, am I accepting this information because it aligns with my viewpoint, or because it's genuinely true? Self-awareness of confirmation bias is the first step to avoiding manipulation from one-sided information sources. Second, learn to face opposing viewpoints and be ready to change when necessary. When you encounter information or perspectives that differ from your own, instead of reacting defensively, try to understand and evaluate them objectively. This will not only help you develop independent thinking but also enable you to make more thoughtful and well-rounded decisions. With framing, it's important to recognize when information is being presented with a specific intent to influence your emotions. Try to separate your emotions from the facts and look at the information from multiple angles. Don't let yourself be swayed simply by the way information is framed. Take time to investigate thoroughly before making a decision. Both confirmation bias and framing make us vulnerable to manipulation without our awareness. However, when you understand these cognitive biases and learn to question the information you encounter, you can protect yourself from subconscious influences and make smarter decisions. Always reassess your beliefs, challenge the information you're exposed to, and think independently and objectively. By doing this, you'll maintain your ability to make the right decisions, free from the distortions caused by cognitive biases. Once we are aware of the influence of confirmation bias and framing, another psychological manipulation tactic we frequently encounter in life is anchoring bias and the halo effect. Both of these tactics rely on natural cognitive biases that we all fall victim to, causing us to be influenced without realizing it. They don't just affect small decisions in our lives. They can also alter how we perceive ourselves and others, creating distorted impressions and leading to irrational actions. Anchoring bias, or the bias of the anchor point, is one of the most common psychological phenomena we encounter when making decisions. This technique exploits the human tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information we receive, using it as a basis for subsequent decisions. You may have experienced this when shopping. When you see a product priced high, but then heavily discounted, you feel like you're getting a great deal and are more likely to buy it, even though the actual value of the product may not be what you think. This happens because the initial information, the high price, creates an anchor in your mind, causing you to perceive the product from a different angle and make a decision without much thought. Anchoring bias is easily noticeable in shopping, but it also appears in bigger decisions, such as when negotiating a salary, buying a house, or making an investment. When you receive an initial price or salary offer, it becomes the anchor in your mind, influencing how you evaluate subsequent prices or offers. This leads you to undervalue other choices once you've been anchored. As a result, your decisions are not based on independent and objective assessments, but merely in reference to the first piece of information, which may not reflect the actual situation. The halo effect, on the other hand, is a psychological phenomenon where people evaluate a person, object, or product based on a single positive or negative characteristic. Simply put, it happens when we have a good impression of one specific trait, and from there, we extend that impression to all other characteristics of that person, even though they might not be related. For example, if you see someone who appears attractive or confident, you might judge them as smart, talented, and trustworthy without truly knowing their abilities or qualities. This is the halo effect, where a single positive or negative trait can completely skew how we perceive a person. The halo effect not only influences how we evaluate others, but can also distort our perceptions of products, services, and brands. If you love a brand because the first product you bought from them was of good quality, you might easily assume that all their other products will be just as good, even though they may not live up to expectations. This helps brands build customer loyalty, because a single positive experience can make customers view other products from that brand favorably, without needing to test them multiple times. The halo effect can even create a distorted impression of someone's capabilities or qualities based on one action or characteristic. When you see someone who is very confident or charismatic, you might assume they have special skills or talents, without truly understanding them. Both anchoring bias and the halo effect can lead to poor decisions because they make us influenced by irrelevant factors. The first piece of information we receive, or a strong first impression, can shape and dominate our entire decision-making process, preventing us from assessing a situation in a comprehensive and objective way. This can lead to inaccuracies in decision-making, especially when we rely on emotions or superficial factors instead of thoroughly considering all the details. So, how can we protect ourselves from these cognitive biases? First, recognize the presence of anchoring bias and the halo effect in daily life. When you need to make an important decision, try to separate your emotions and initial impressions from the actual facts. For example, when buying a product, don't rely solely on the initial price or appealing advertisements to make a decision. Ask yourself if you're being influenced by that first piece of information. Try to seek additional information and make decisions based on practical, objective factors rather than relying on first impressions. Second, learn to view others more fairly. Don't let one standout trait, such as confidence, appearance, or speech, completely shape your judgment of that person. When you meet someone new, remind yourself that the halo effect might cause you to form a distorted impression of them. Be careful when building long-term judgments about a person based on initial impressions, because what you see may just be the surface and not reflect the full essence of who they are. Finally, remember that while we can't avoid all cognitive biases, being aware of them is the first step to minimizing their negative impact on your decisions. When you know you tend to be influenced by irrelevant factors, you can actively counter them and make decisions based on careful analysis and reasoning instead of being swayed by subconscious elements. You can now close your eyes and let your thoughts fade away like mist. If your mind still wants to wander, let it continue its journey into the next video, where we dive deeper into the mysteries of the soul. But if your body is tired, let this sound guide you into peaceful sleep. No need to try, just breathe. And remember, everything you're searching for is quietly resting inside you.